Are you prepared for a summer grid failure? As the mercury rises, so does the strain on our aging power grid. With the potential for extended outages during the sweltering summer months, it's imperative to be prepared. Having a plan in place not only ensures your comfort but could also be a lifesaver when the heat is relentless and the power grid is unyielding. So stay with us as we dive deeper into why this is a real concern and how you can prepare. Why should we worry about a summer grid failure? Well, the answer lies in understanding the frailties of our aging electrical grid. Picture this, a complex, interconnected network that's been around for decades, essentially unchanged. Our grid is like a vintage car, a marvel in its day, but not quite equipped for the demands of the modern world. Our power infrastructure was designed for a different era, one without the massive energy demands we see today. The grid strains under the weight of these demands, especially during peak usage times. Overloads are a common occurrence, and each one brings us a step closer to a catastrophic failure. But it's not just about the grid's age or the lack of modernization. There's also the issue of extreme weather, and in particular, heat waves. As temperatures soar, so does our reliance on air conditioning and refrigeration. This puts an enormous strain on the grid, often leading to rolling blackouts or, in the worst-case scenario, a complete grid failure. And let's not forget the impact of climate change. It's not just making our summers hotter, it's also resulting in more frequent and severe heat waves. Our grid simply wasn't designed to handle this kind of pressure. Then there's the vulnerability to physical and cyber attacks. A well-placed strike on a power station or a sophisticated hack can plunge vast areas into darkness. And while efforts are being made to secure the grid, it's a constant battle against increasingly sophisticated threats. So you see, the risk of a summer grid failure is not just a dystopian fantasy. It's a real, tangible possibility, and it's one that we need to prepare for. If a widespread power outage were to occur during a heat wave, the consequences could be dire. Without air conditioning, refrigeration, or the ability to cook, many of us would be left struggling to cope. So it's clear that a summer grid failure is a real possibility. Let's talk about what you'll need to weather it. What are the must-haves to survive a grid failure in summer? When the grid fails and the summer sun is beating down, certain supplies become as precious as gold. The key is to prioritize. Start with essentials like portable fans. They're small, inexpensive, and can drastically improve your comfort levels. Solar chargers are next. They're your ticket to having power when the grid is down. You can charge everything from mobile devices to batteries for your fans, making them a must-have. Speaking of batteries, don't underestimate their importance. Stock up on battery-operated devices like radios for communication, flashlights for when the sun goes down, and even battery-operated water purifiers. They'll keep you connected, illuminated, and hydrated. Speaking of hydration, it's crucial in a heat wave. Water will quench your thirst, yes, but it can also cool you down and help with hygiene. Aim to have a substantial supply on hand. If that's not possible, consider water purification tablets or filters to make unsafe water drinkable. And let's not forget about food. When the power's out and the fridge is off, non-perishable food becomes your best friend. Canned goods, dried fruit, nuts, and granola bars are all great options. They require no cooking, no refrigeration, and they're packed with the nutrients you'll need to keep going. Now, all these supplies are vital, but there's one more thing that's just as important but often overlooked: insulation. A well-insulated home is a cooler home. It keeps the heat out and the cool air in. That means, even without air conditioning, your home can be a refuge from the blazing sun. Consider investing in insulation for your walls, roof, and windows. It's a preparation that pays off in comfort. With these supplies, you're well on your way to being prepared. But how can you stay cool if the power's out? Let's find out in our next segment. How can you beat the heat without power? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Well, let's dive into some cost-effective cooling strategies that don't rely on the grid. First and foremost, consider blackout curtains. These are not just for those who work the graveyard shift and need to sleep during the day. Blackout curtains are fantastic for blocking out sunlight and heat. They can significantly reduce the temperature in your home, and the best part is, they don't require any power to operate. Another simple yet effective strategy is creating airflow with battery-operated fans. While they won't cool a room like an air conditioner, they can make it feel cooler by evaporating sweat from your skin. The trick is to position them strategically for maximum comfort. For example, placing a fan by a window can help draw in cooler air from outside, especially during the evening hours. Now, speaking of evening hours, let's talk about natural cooling methods. You know that refreshing feeling of a cool breeze on a hot summer night? You can simulate that by hanging wet towels or sheets in open windows during cooler evening hours. The incoming breeze will pass through the damp fabric, cooling the air and creating a pleasant, refreshing effect. Also, consider the ancient Egyptian method of sleeping. They used to dampen a sheet or blanket and use it as a cover during hot nights. The evaporation of the water from the sheet would create a cooling effect, similar to how sweating cools our bodies. This method is best used in dry climates, where the evaporation process is more effective. Finally, don't underestimate the value of hydration. Drinking plenty of water not only keeps you hydrated but also helps cool your body from the inside out. And if you're feeling adventurous, you can even make your own DIY swamp cooler by blowing a fan over a container of ice. With these strategies, you can stay cool even when the power's out. But what if you could have a backup power source? What are your options for backup power? That's a question that becomes crucial when we're talking about grid failure during the summer months. Let's start small. Portable generators and solar-powered battery packs, for instance. These are nifty solutions that are relatively inexpensive and can power essential items like a fan or a fridge. The pros, they're affordable, portable, and easy to set up. The cons, well, they're limited in their capacity. If you've got a lot of gadgets or appliances, or if the power outage drags on for days, these might not cut it. On the other end of the spectrum, we have whole home backup systems. These are the big guns. They can power your entire house, from the kitchen to the bedroom and everything in between. Solar panel installations, large generators, and battery banks fall into this category. Yes, they're more costly, but they also offer more power and longer run times. The downside? The cost, of course, and they also require a more complex setup. You might need to hire a professional to install them, and they're not something you can easily pack up and take with you if you decide to bug out. So you've got to balance things out. What are your power needs? How much are you willing to spend? What's the duration of the power outage you're preparing for? Here's a rule of thumb. If you're prepping for short-term outages and you're on a tight budget, small backup solutions could be your best bet. But if you want to ensure that you have power for an extended period, and you don't mind shelling out a bit more, whole home systems might be the way to go. Remember, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. It's about finding what's right for you, for your home, and for your specific situation. By considering your needs and budget, you can find the right backup solution, but how much can you expect to spend? Well, that's what we're going to delve into next. Stay tuned. What's the cost of being prepared, you might ask? Well, as with most things, it depends on your needs and budget. Let's break down the typical costs for various backup power systems. Starting small, we have portable solar panels and battery setups. These are perfect for powering essential devices like fans, radios, and charging your phone. You can expect to spend anywhere from a couple hundred to a few $1,000s depending on the capacity and quality of the system. Remember, high-quality solar panels and batteries can last for years, so it's a worthy investment for any prepper. Next, we have mid-range options like larger generators. These can power bigger appliances like refrigerators or a small air conditioning unit. Depending on the power output and fuel type, these can range from a few hundred to several $1,000s. Keep in mind that fuel costs can add up, especially during prolonged power outages. If you're looking for a more comprehensive solution, high-end options include full solar panel installations with large battery banks. These systems can power an entire house, including larger appliances and even heating or cooling systems. These setups can cost upwards of $10,000, but they offer the most independence from the grid. It's like having your own personal power station. Remember, the initial investment might seem steep, but consider the long-term benefits. In times of grid failure, having a reliable power source can mean the difference between comfort and hardship. Plus, many of these systems can save you money on your energy bills in the long run. And if you're savvy, you might even be able to sell excess power back to the grid when it's up and running. So, as you can see, there's a broad spectrum of costs when it comes to backup power systems. It all comes down to your specific needs, your budget, and how prepared you want to be. Investing in a backup power source can be cost-effective in the long run. But how can you prepare for long-term off-grid living? That's a question we'll tackle in the next segment, so stick around as we delve deeper into long-term prepping strategies. How can you live off the grid in the long run, you may ask? Well, long-term prepping strategies require a shift in mindset. It's not just about surviving a temporary power outage, but also about building resilience and self-reliance. Firstly, consider investing in renewable energy sources. Solar power is a top choice due to its abundance and accessibility. Solar panels can be installed on rooftops or open spaces, and they can generate enough electricity to power your entire home. Wind turbines are another viable option, especially in areas with consistent wind patterns. These energy sources not only offer independence from the grid but also contribute to a sustainable future. Next, it's crucial to design a system tailored to your specific geographic and climate conditions. If you live in a hot area, focusing on cooling strategies and water storage should be a priority. On the other hand, if you reside in a colder region, heating and insulation strategies will be more important. Energy storage is another critical aspect of long-term prepping. Battery banks can store the energy generated by your renewable sources, ensuring you have power, even when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing. Look into deep-cycle batteries, which are designed for repeated charging and discharging, making them ideal for off-grid living. Don't forget about food and water. Growing your own food and having a reliable water source are key to self-sufficiency. Consider setting up a garden, raising livestock, or even building a greenhouse. Rainwater collection systems and water purification methods should also be part of your long-term prepping plan. Lastly, remember that knowledge is power. Learn skills like first aid, home repair, and food preservation. These skills will not only help you survive a grid failure but also enrich your life in general. The goal of long-term prepping is to create a lifestyle that can withstand not just temporary power outages but also prolonged disruptions. It's about becoming more self-reliant, reducing your dependency on external systems, and ultimately, living a more sustainable and resilient life. With these strategies, you can be prepared for any grid failure. But how can you beat the heat in the moment? What are some quick ways to cool down during a heat wave? Well, let's dive into that. When the power grid fails in the sweltering summer, it's crucial to have an arsenal of cooling strategies at your disposal. Firstly, consider making do-it-yourself ice packs. Fill a zip-top bag with a mixture of water and rubbing alcohol, freeze it, and voila! You've got a reusable ice pack. Wrap it in a towel and apply it to your neck, wrists, or feet for a quick cool down. Staying hydrated is another key strategy. Remember, when it's hot, your body loses water faster, so you need to replenish it more often. Keep your water supply cool by wrapping bottles in wet cloth and placing them in shaded areas. Additionally, plan your activities around the cooler parts of the day. Try to avoid strenuous tasks during peak heat hours, typically between 11 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. Instead, opt for early morning or late evening when the sun is less intense. Let's not forget about community resources. In many areas, cooling centers or shared spaces with backup power are available during extreme heat events. These can be lifesavers, especially for those without their own backup systems. Remember, it's not just about surviving a heat wave during a grid failure. It's about staying comfortable and safe. These tips can help you stay cool during a summer grid failure. Let's recap what we've learned. What have we learned today? We now know the vulnerabilities of our aging power grid, especially in the heat of summer. We've discussed essential supplies, cost-effective cooling strategies, and the pros and cons of different backup systems. We've also explored long-term prepping strategies and creative ways to beat the heat. All this knowledge emphasizes the importance of preparing in advance to ensure comfort and safety during a summer grid failure. Remember, the key to surviving a summer grid failure is preparation. Ready to start prepping for a summer grid failure? It's time to assess your needs and capabilities. Do you have the essentials? Can your home maintain cooler indoor temperatures? How about backup power solutions? These are questions you need to answer now, not when the power goes out. Being prepared means being ahead. Don't forget to subscribe for more practical tips on prepping and survival. Stay safe and prepared.